America does not begin the way we like to remember it. It does not begin with fireworks, polished speeches, or perfectly folded flags. It begins in fear, in hunger, in mud and blood and uncertainty. It begins with an idea so fragile that one wrong decision could have erased it forever. And standing at the center of that moment was George Washington, a man we carved into marble, a man we turned into myth, the father of his country, the indispensable leader, the man who walked away from power when the world expected him to seize it. But behind the clean portraits and classroom praise lies a contradiction so deep and so uncomfortable that it still shapes the United States today, because the same man who led a revolution for liberty also owned human beings. And understanding that contradiction is not about tearing Washington down. It's about understanding the country he helped create and the tension America still lives with every single day. Before you scroll away or reduce this to slogans and outrage, pause for a moment. And if you value real American history, the kind that explains power, leadership, and consequence, subscribe now. Not for comfort, for truth. George Washington did not stumble into greatness. He was forged in failure, ambition, and survival. Long before independence, he was a young officer in the British colonial system, ambitious, status-driven, hungry for land and recognition. Like many elite Virginians of his time, his wealth and influence were tied directly to slavery. Enslaved labor worked his fields, maintained his household, and built the foundation of his power. This was not unusual for his world, but it was defining. When revolution came, Washington did something extraordinary. He became the face of resistance against the most powerful empire on earth. He took command of an army that was underpaid, underfed, poorly trained, and constantly on the edge of collapse. At Valley Forge, men froze without shoes. Disease killed more soldiers than British bullets. Desertion was constant. Defeat was always close. Washington held that army together not through charisma alone, and not through brilliance alone, but through discipline, presence, and something rare in leaders across history, restraint. He listened, he adapted, he learned from failure, and most importantly, he refused to become a tyrant even when circumstances gave him every excuse to do so. And this is where the contradiction deepens. Washington could imagine a nation without a king. But he could not imagine, at least not at first, a nation without slavery. This was not ignorance. This was not innocence. His letters reveal discomfort, doubt, even guilt. He understood the moral problem, but he also understood the political reality of his time. Without unity among the colonies, especially the southern ones, the revolution would fail, so liberty was compromised at its birth. Freedom was declared universal but applied selectively. And that decision did not disappear when the war ended. It embedded itself into the American system, into laws, into economics, into power, into silence. When Washington became president, he faced something no leader had faced before. How do you create a republic that survives without becoming a monarchy? Every choice he made would become precedent. How long a president serves, how power transfers, how the military answers to civilian authority. Washington understood the danger of ambition. He could have ruled for life. Many wanted him to. Instead, he stepped down. Not once, but twice. That single act may be the most important moment in American democracy. It proved that leadership was service, not ownership. That power could be held without being consumed by it. And yet, even as Washington voluntarily surrendered power over a nation, he continued to hold power over people who had none. Here is the darkest truth. While living in Philadelphia, the temporary capital, where gradual emancipation laws existed, Washington quietly rotated enslaved workers back to Virginia to prevent them from gaining freedom. This was not passive participation. It was deliberate preservation, careful, legal, calculated. And this is where modern America truly begins to take shape, because Washington embodied the Central American tension, high ideals restrained by fear of collapse, moral awareness limited by political calculation. He believed slavery was wrong. He also believed disunion would destroy everything, so he chose unity over justice, stability over immediacy, survival over confrontation. That tension did not die with him. It became policy, it became compromise, it became delay, and eventually it became war. The Constitution reflects this balance, brilliant in structure, flawed in execution, designed to protect liberty while postponing justice. Washington understood that slavery could tear the nation apart, but he feared that addressing it too directly would do so immediately. So the problem was deferred, and history never forgets deferred justice. If this story is challenging what you thought you knew, stay with it. And if you want more American history told honestly, not emotionally manipulated, subscribe now. Because this is where understanding replaces mythology. Near the end of his life, something changed. Quietly, privately, Washington evolved, influenced by revolutionary ideals and the reality of enslaved people seeking freedom. He made a decision unlike any other founder of his stature. In his will, he ordered the emancipation of his enslaved people upon his wife's death. It was not a public crusade. It was not a political stand. But it mattered because it revealed internal conflict, a man wrestling with the legacy he would leave behind. Washington was not a saint, but he was not static, and that evolution mirrors America itself, a nation capable of growth but slow to act, visionary yet cautious, powerful yet divided. Washington's greatest contribution may not have been winning the war. It may have been how he ended it. When he resigned his commission and returned home, the world was stunned. King George reportedly said that if Washington truly did that, he would be the greatest man alive. That moment cemented civilian control of the military, a principle that still defines American democracy today. And yet, even as Washington walked away from power publicly, he never fully dismantled power privately. And that contradiction echoes through American history, through leaders who spoke of freedom while enforcing inequality, through systems built on compromise that postpone justice, through a nation constantly struggling to live up to its own ideals. Washington's leadership during crisis became the American template: steady, cautious, unifying, but often morally delayed. And that matters today, because every national crisis forces the same question Washington faced: how much can you sacrifice to survive? And what happens when survival costs justice? The uncomfortable truth is this: America exists because Washington chose unity over purity. That choice saved the nation, but it also planted the seeds of its deepest wounds. This is not about canceling Washington, and it's not about worshiping him. It's about understanding him, because myth makes nations fragile. Truth makes them resilient. Washington was deeply human, strategic, restrained, flawed, visionary, and America inherited all of it: the brilliance and the burden, the ideals and the delays, the power and the contradictions. If you're still watching right now, you understand something most people never will. History is not a weapon. It is a warning and a guide. As America approaches another era of uncertainty, leadership crisis, and identity debate, Washington's story matters more than ever because the question he left behind is still unanswered. Can a nation founded on compromise eventually deliver justice, or will it remain trapped by the decisions made to survive its birth? That answer is not found in monuments. It is found in choices. And this story is not over. It is still being written by leaders, by citizens, by those willing to confront truth instead of hiding behind myth. So if you want more American history told the way it actually happened, raw, honest, and powerful, make sure you're subscribed, because the past doesn't just explain where we came from, it tells us where we're headed. And George Washington, in all his greatness and contradiction, still stands at the center of that road.